Welcome to 1+1. I'm Kurt Fearnley. Comedian Adam Hills is a household name on both sides of the world. Well known for Spicks and Specks here in Australia and The Last Leg in the UK. We caught up here in Melbourne to talk about comedy, COVID, and finding community in disability. Will Anderson, welcome to 1+1.
Do you know what? Like, when Will Anderson decided to let his hair go grey, I was like, oh, come on. That was the only way people could tell us apart. Now, the only way people could tell us apart was either, like, he had the dark hair and I had let myself go grey, or if we were both in shorts, then it was a giveaway which one was me.
So you do get
mistaken
for Will?
Yes, it happens all the time. And I think part of it is he was on a radio show with Adam. So Will and Adam is in people's minds. So people would come up to me and go, oh, mate, I love your stuff. I used to listen to you, on Triple J. And I go, I'm not Will, I'm Adam. And they go, oh, yeah, I used to listen to you with Will on Triple J. And I go, no. I mean, I guess we were both on Wednesday night comedy shows. He was on, Gruen or Glass House, and I was on Spicks and Specks. We're both a similar age. But Will and I have been on radio together, and we do not work well together because we go for the same joke. Oh, really? We think of the same things. We'll both say the same punchline at the same time. And to be a proper comedy duo, you need to have a bit of yin and yang. And Will and I are just yin and yin.
Well, I should probably go back to the start. So, Adam Hills, welcome to 1+1.
Pleasure to be here.
When did you know that you wanted to be a comedian?
Oh, early. There's a difference for me between when I knew I wanted to be a comedian and when I knew I possibly could. So I'd say, like even 5th grade, I remember coming up with comedy sketches. Like we'd have to present something to the class and I would write a comedy sketch. But I never thought of it as an actual career, like something you could do. It wasn't until I started, I think, university, and a friend of mine took me to the Sydney Comedy Store and something called an open mic night. I didn't even know an open mic night existed. And I watched comedians just get up and have a crack. And then I went, oh my goodness, there's a way that I can get from here to there. So that's why I always wanted to be a comedian, but didn't know until I was about 18 that it was a possibility.
Have you ever thought that there are any jokes that are off limits?
I don't think there are any subjects that are off limits because it depends what the joke is that you're making about that subject.
What about disability? Can it be funny?
Oh, yeah, disability's hilarious. Do you know? I mean, the biggest eye-opener for me, comedically, I think, was that when I went to the 2008 Paralympics to cover it for the ABC and hung out with a whole bunch of Paralympians, the Australian team, yourself at the time, and just to see the jokes that came out of people with disabilities, they are way worse than anything I've ever come across. And if, comedy comes with tragedy. It's our way of dealing with difficult situations in life. And, look, I've got one foot. I've got, as I was told often by Paralympians, it's not a real disability. But it's a bit of a pain. Do you know what? It's annoying.
Well, you did get told that by a double amputee that you were halfway. Almost.
Louis Savage in particular was like, you're not one of us.
I had a foot.
But I think, it's a pain. I honestly don't think enough people say this, but and I've talked to other people with disabilities, it's a bit of a pain in the ass. Like, it's almost like we're raised to just get on with it, just get over it and deal with life. And I think I have, and I think you have, and nothing's going to hold us back. But I think it's important every now and again to recognise, man, this is annoying. This is really starting to get on my nerves now. And that's where a good sense of humour kicks in. So for me, and also I started talking about my foot on stage. Like I didn't talk about my foot in comedy for ages. And part of it was very early on. I did a joke about it very early on when I was like 6 months into my comedy career. And this older comic went, you're not good enough to talk about your foot yet. I was like, what? And he said, you're still working out how to be funny. Like, when you work out what you want to say about your foot, and how to do it properly, then you'll be untouchable. But you've got to wait. And it was only after September 11, and I've talked about this a lot, but going through a metal detector in Heathrow Airport, and the security guard was really freaked out and didn't check my foot after it set the metal detector off because he was too scared of offending the disabled guy.
Right, what's going on down there? And all I said to the guy was, oh, it's an artificial foot. And he just went, oh, geez, go through, mate. No, just go through. I'm thinking, well, check, there could be a knife. No, just go, buddy. I don't care if the plane goes down. I don't want to offend a spastic. Just go, for God's sake.
And that's when I realised that I need to talk about my foot on stage to make people okay with it. Because people have freaked out about disability. It made me realise, and that humour is a really good way of broaching that subject with people.
When did you get your breakthrough? When did you know that you were going to be a comedian?
I don't know. There's been a series of little... Like, I remember doing my first open mic night and dying.
But that's when you figure out whether or not you want it.
You're exactly right. You need a night like that to go, right, do you really want to do this? Do you want to get better at it? Or has that turned you off for life? And I just went back and back and back. And I think probably my first break was being booked for a professional gig. Like when the manager said, right, you don't have to do the open mics, or you can do the open mics, but I'm going to give you a weekend and see how it goes. For me, it's been a series of little tiny breakthroughs, things like that, getting my first weekend comparing, going to the Edinburgh Festival for the first time, working in radio. It's just been, like, I'm persistent if nothing else.
What about Spicks and Specks? Why do you think that it's so popular?
Oh, so many reasons. I think Miff and Alan and I were just like a three-part harmony. We just worked really, really well together. And there's a genuine chemistry there. There's nothing faked. We love each other. We went on tour together. We are just really, really tight and really close. And I think that comes across. But a guy came on board really early on called Peter Fearnley, and he whipped me into shape. Like, I'd say something, why are you saying that? I don't know, it feels like the right thing to say. Don't say that, do it this way. Oh, okay, fine. But there was one thing that he taught me, which was you've got to treat Spicks and Specks like a dinner party. And imagine that the camera is the guest that has just turned up at the dinner party. They don't know who anybody else is or what you're talking about. So it's your job to look at that person and go, oh, hi, we're having a dinner party about music. This is so-and-so, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so, that's so-and-so. We're going to play a game. The first game is this. So you're basically explaining it like it's a guest who's just turned up at your house. And then if there's a chat and this person brings... I remember someone in one of the early episodes talking about Limp Bizkit, and him afterwards going, what's Limp Bizkit? And well, it's a band. It's kind of a really heavy rock band from the 90s. And he went, then you need to say that. Because there'll be people like me who don't know who Limp Bizkit are. And the people who do know, they're not going to mind that you stop and go, look at the camera and go, oh, by the way, Limp Bizkit were a band from the 90s. They're fine with it. But the people who don't know will go, oh, okay, well, thanks for letting me in on the conversation. So I think the chemistry of Miff and Alan and I and the guests and the lack of ego, I think all of that kind of made it work.
You've created a show that's been a huge hit in the UK, The Last Leg.
Josh Whitcomb and Alex Brooker, we look at the big stories of the week.
Oh, my God!
Oh, hang on. I've shot below there, early.
Bloody hell.
I don't know where it is. That's a problem. Kind of how it works with being blind, mate.
Come on, limbo, yeah!
It came into the Paralympic world like a fresh breeze. And the way that you were openly talking about disability and taking people on a journey around disability as well through that show, did you learn about yourself through that process?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the biggest moment for me, even before The Last Leg started, was the opening ceremony in London of... When Paralympics GB team came into the stadium, fireworks were going off around them, and David Bowie's We Can Be Heroes was blasting, and the crowd were on their feet. And I'd never seen people with disabilities treated like that before. And I came up with like at the end of that Olympics, I remember the Paralympics, I remember saying that Sydney was the first time that Paralympians were treated as equals. but London was the first time they were treated as heroes. And like, I'm really embarrassed to admit this, but that was the first time that I went, yeah, I am disabled. Do you know what I mean? Like, up until London, I was like, it's not really a disability. This isn't a proper, partly because it's only half a foot, but also I never saw myself as being disabled. But then I kind of saw the cool gang and went, oh man, I want to be part of them. I want to be part of that gang. They look awesome. So it kind of did, you know, even to the point where before those Paralympics, my prosthetic was just flesh-coloured. And I didn't, you know, people would have cool designs on their prosthetics, and I didn't want to show it off. And then after that, I mean, I had a bet with Alex on the show that, in fact, you were part of that bet. We had a bet that if England beat Australia in the medal tally, I would have the Union flag painted on my leg, and it came down to your race. It came down to your marathon. Oh my God, I remember seeing you at the finish line.
I also remember it.
Oh, you were so, like, gracious and chatty, like, considering what you had just put yourself through physically and mentally. And I remember you coming over thinking, how is this guy smiling? How is this guy being so friendly? And so devastated for me that I had to have a Union flag on my leg. But then ever since then, it's now... so before Rio, they asked me to go and give a speech to the British Paralympic team and, like, inspire them to beat Australia. And I went, no, I can't do that. I'm not going to tell them to beat Australia. I said, I'll tell you what I will do. I'll make a bet that if they do something to beat Australia, I will humiliate myself. But I don't want them to beat Australia. So I said, if you end up with more golds in Rio than Australia, I will have the name of every gold medalist painted on my prosthetic, which I do. So this one...
Oh, you've still got it.
I've still got it. It's the name of every British gold medal winner in Rio.
We need a new bet.
Absolutely.
We need to get rid of that.
Yeah, so they want me to do a new one in the next, like, couple of weeks because looking ahead to Tokyo. So I need to come up with a new bet.
What about, so when you were a kid, there was no moment where you saw yourself as somebody with a disability?
No, I remember being maybe 10 or 12 and my mum saying to me, do you want to try out for... But the way she put it, the disabled Olympics. I'm not even sure it was referred to as the Paralympics at that point. And I kind of, at that point I was playing tennis. I was playing a pretty high standard of tennis. And I kind of went, partly through ignorance and partly through pride, I said, no, I didn't want to try out. If there had been para-tennis at that point, and not wheelchair tennis, but like amputee tennis, I might have, because that was my sport. I loved playing tennis. Also, I didn't know the way the Paralympics worked. So I thought, well, it's not going to be fair. I'm only missing half a foot. I can't run against some guy who's missing 2 legs. I didn't know that there were different classifications and all that kind of stuff. So partly through pride and wanting to do what able-bodied people did, partly through not seeing myself as being disabled, and partly through a bit of ignorance about what the Paralympics actually were, I said no.
But internally, I crawled around and played footy with all my mates because I felt that I had to do what everyone had to do.
Yeah, yeah.
But there was a moment that you're sitting on your own and you realise there wasn't, there was a line drawn.
Yeah.
And I was different. And there was no moment where you sat there and went, shit, I don't have a foot.
I mean, again, I think my one was always a weird one because it didn't really show. Like, I remember at certain summers where I would start wearing shorts again and kids in the street would come up and go, what happened to your leg? And I'd look at them and go, oh, sorry, I completely forgot. I just haven't seen you in shorts for a while.
And that's the funny thing, that's what happens with every person with a disability, I feel, is that they forget until it's brought back to them.
Yeah, yeah. And those are the moments that, like I referenced before, the annoying moments. Because it's almost like you're lulled into a false sense of security. I find that you can go, this doesn't stop me doing anything until it does. And then you're going to go, and that can be a real come down, that moment of just remembering that there's certain things that you can't do.
Did you ever speak to your mum about it? Or did she ever speak to you about how your foot or lack of foot came to be?
We don't know. Like, we don't...
Welcome to the club.
Really? Really? No idea.
No idea, no.
It's such a weird thing that it could be... I I mean, there's not even any point wondering what it might be. Do you know, Mum has said, well, maybe it was because I was lifting boxes when I was pregnant before I knew I was pregnant. Maybe it's because I worked in a dentist surgery and I got too close to the x-rays. I was like, well, don't. Maybe it wasn't.
Do you ever think that she would have guilt?
I really hope she doesn't. In fact, I remember in Beijing, the closing ceremony, the closing ceremony of the Paralympics. And I don't know, were you part of that closing ceremony? Were you on the...
That was the evening after the marathon, and I had won that day.
Yeah.
And I'd found a bar in the stadium.
Okay.
That was free beer in Beijing, and there were about 100 Australians. So
Okay.
memory's a little hazy.
Let me remind you of what happened. It was so beautifully Chinese in that there were cherry blossoms that fell from the sky, and it was a real kind of very artistic, very beautiful ceremony. But everyone got a postcard, and the idea was you would address it. It was stamped, you would address it, and you would send it to someone anywhere in the world. And it was postcards from Beijing being sent out around the world, and it was really lovely. And I wrote to my mum, because I thought, I don't know if she has any guilt, and we've never really discussed that, but I thought if there was any part of her that thought she contributed to me not having a foot, I wanted her to know that that contribution led to me having this incredible experience at the Beijing Paralympics with cherry blossoms. And so I just wrote, thank you for doing whatever you did that led me to be here. And I posted that. And I was hoping she would just understand the message. And then years later, I talked to her about that, and she went, oh, I thought you meant like having sex with your dad.
Hey, Mum.
That beautiful moment was lost. But yeah, you know, and I'm sure, I don't know whether you feel the same, but I love where I am right now, hosting the last leg, being able to go to the Paralympics, playing disability rugby league has been an amazing eye-opener for me recently. And, you know, I don't know what would have happened had I not been born without a right foot. Would my life have been better? I can't imagine how it could have been any better, but look, I am where I am because of this, and I'm in a pretty good place, so...
You are currently crisscrossing, both living and working on the other side of the world in the middle of a pandemic. You've got... You were almost stepping in two completely different worlds when you do that. How are you finding that experience?
Oh, I'm really fragile. Like, I'm talking to you is about the first time... Because I got out of quarantine 6 days ago. And I think talking to you is about the first time... I've done a few interviews since then. This is the first time I've kind of felt me come back a little bit. And maybe it's because it's one-on-one, but it's been really weird because we've all been through a thing over the past 12 months. And regardless of whereabouts in Australia or in the world you are, we've all had it in different ways. But that underlying uncertainty and fear, and I'm lucky because I got to still do a job. I didn't get to do stand-up, but I still got to do the TV work. We've all had to deal with this. And I think people have this tendency in life, when things are tough, they get through it. And it's only when they get to the other end that they go, oh my God, and they like have a bit of a breakdown and a stress cry and whatever. And I think we collectively as a planet, we need to have that stress cry. And we're not there yet because it's not over.
Tell me about rugby league. Tell me about what you're playing right now.
So I grew up loving rugby league. When I was 3 days old, my dad brought a red and green South Sydney Rabbit into the hospital for me. He was a Rabbitoh supporter. His dad was a Rabbitoh supporter. I loved it. I lived for the South Sydney Rabbitohs, which was weird because I grew up in the Sutherland Shire, so it wasn't even in the right area. I didn't even go to that many games. And maybe that made it feel more mysterious to me that it was all the way in Redfern, which was ages away. And I played a lot. I played for, you know, touch football at school, and then I got to high school and I played rugby league. And I've realised now that there's a point, I think I was about 13 or 14, where you manage to keep up with the able-bodied kids, but then you just can't after a while. And I guess I focused more on tennis. So it was always this little unfulfilled thing in the back of my head. And then 2 or 3 years ago, I got a tweet from someone saying, did you know that the South Sydney Rabbitohs disability team won last weekend? I didn't even know there was a disability Rabbitohs team. And I called them up and said, what? How does this work? And I was looking on Facebook and I went, oh my God, there's people with limbs missing and cerebral palsy playing rugby league. This is awesome. And I said, look, can I help? Can I support? Can I play? And they went, well, it's going to be tough to play. You live in London. But the Warrington Wolves rugby league team, Super League team, have just contacted us. They want to start up England's first disability rugby league team. Maybe you can help them out. So I got a number, gave them a call, went up, had a bit of a run around with them. They set up a trial session. I trialled and they went, yeah, do you want to play? And so we started training every week, but proper training with proper kit. So we set up a league in the UK with a few other different teams. And then I set up a match against the Rabbitohs at ANZ Stadium to see who was the World Club champions. So we came out and played at ANZ and we won, called ourselves world champions. Then the RFL in the UK set up a proper league and we won that. We won the grand final. We've played at Anfield, which is Liverpool's home stadium. I've been on the pitch at Wembley. And I've also discovered, I've discovered so many things about it. I've discovered how disability sport in particular, goes hand in hand with mental health. That a lot of these guys that turned up have struggled with their disabilities, have struggled with life generally, have struggled with mental health issues. And then they can turn up on a Tuesday night and train with other people with disabilities. Because when you're all disabled, no one's disabled.
Correct.
No one's looking at each other going, what happened to you? And what happened to you? It's more like, if you drop another ball, you're off the team.
If that prosthesis comes on, I will tape it on next time.
And in fact, more the point, you then start using other people's disabilities against them. Like I've had, our captain one...
You are truly Paralympic material.
Our captain said to me once, like, I'm going to offload to you, run at Tony's left shoulder. And I went, why his left shoulder? And he went, because he hasn't got a hand on that side. It's not going to tackle you. And you're right, okay. So if you had said to these blokes, and there are some women that play as well, if you had said to them, right, let's have a social club on a Tuesday night where we get together with other people with disabilities and we talk about our disabilities, none of them would have turned up. But if you said, let's turn up on a Tuesday night and play rugby league, they're all there. And all that other stuff happens. There's all that... The guys with CP might discuss therapies with each other. The guy with prosthetics will talk about, oh, hang on, how do you deal with... All of that stuff happens. So there's this whole mental health issue that goes along with disability sport. But also, I've never been part of a team before. Like, I played tennis. It was a one-out sport. To be part of that camaraderie and to train together. And the biggest thing I've learned from this is something I never thought I could do in my life, which is win. Because being a comedian, you're the fool, you're the joker. Winning's not funny, losing is funny. And I always kind of wrote it off as, I'm happy to be the loser because I know it'll become good comedy. So it's been such a ridiculous journey of mateship, of competitiveness, but of learning that I don't have to be a loser.
I had that moment when I was 12.
No, really?
Maybe 13. Yep.
In what was it?
Well, I was crawling around the rugby league field and I saw wheelchair racing and I just thought, this is something where I don't have to be the worst person at stuff.
Wow.
and that sent my life in a completely different direction.
I can't, people say to us that they think the last leg has changed perceptions of disability. And I don't think I'm being like immodest when I deflect and go, no, the Paralympics does. We just showed how great the Paralympics are because it changed my perception of what my disability was. And it also made me realise that no one at the Paralympics thinks they're disabled. I would turn up there and go, I shouldn't be. I'm glad I didn't compete with these people because, look, that's not a disability. And then you meet people like yourself or Johnny Peacock or Ellie Simmons and you go, oh, hang on, you don't think you're disabled either. Of course no one really feels. Everyone's just competing at the best of their abilities. So, yeah, that's fascinating. Do you feel like, here's a thing that I think has probably followed me throughout my life and it's probably made me a good comedian, but possibly affected me as a person. I think I will always feel like there's something wrong with me. Like that deep down, there's a little bit that's defective. And maybe it's that feeling of, you know, no matter what shape I get my body in, I can work out at the gym every day for the rest of my life. I still have to take my foot off and waddle weirdly when I walk down to the water. And I think that breeds a bit of maybe humility.
I think you can do both, humility, but also I think there is strength there as well.
Yeah.
If you're able to lean into it and you're able to say that I will find fire there, you know. So I know that I will always waddle down to the water crawling, but I also know that part of me is more fierce than any other person who walks perfectly to the water.
Right.
And I think sport gave me that.
Yeah. And that's probably a particularly Australian thing, but I think I'm never more defiant than when I'm walking to the water at the beach. Because I know, like, the rest of my life I can cover it up. I can wear the prosthetic. Even if I'm in shorts, people don't necessarily know what's going on down there. Maybe it's a brace, whatever. But that moment where I take it off and I walk and one leg's longer than the other and I have to go like that, I know people are looking. And yeah, I think fierce is exactly the right word. That's the moment where I walk down to the water. Once I'm in the water, no one can see it either. But it's that walk to the water is such a particularly Australian thing that I think almost that's the moment where you go, part of my brain's going, don't give a shit. You can think whatever you want. This is me walking to the water.
But there is part that's going, holy shit, everyone's watching.
Yeah.
Mate, I've loved watching your journey alongside the Paralympic movement as much as I've enjoyed participating in it. So thanks for joining me on 1+1.
It's a pleasure, but also, like, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I know that was meant to be the wrap-up, but yours and my journey through the Paralympics, and for me to be part of the Paralympic movement and to see it, and to, no matter how late it was that I came to it, and disability sport in general, has been a huge honour and a massive, massive part of my life. And as much as, you know, you say that you've enjoyed watching my journey, me watching you from Beijing and from London and from Rio has been, I kind of feel like we've kind of come together. Do you know what I've just realised? We've come together, you from disability sport and me from TV, and now I'm playing disability rugby league and you're hosting a TV show. Our journeys are intertwined is what I'm trying to say.
Mate, well, I think you're telling the story to make sure that the next Adam Hills feels comfortable joining disability sport when he's 7 years old. And, you know, that's as important, sometimes that's as important as the athlete that's out there doing it. So,
well, do you know what? Sorry, just to cut you off. Keep rolling. I don't know what's on next on the ABC, but we're going to keep going. That's why I'm so passionate about disability rugby league, because as much as 12-year-old me didn't want to go to the Paralympics, but I might have if there had been tennis. If there had been para rugby league, absolutely, I would have jumped at that. So that's why it's important for me to talk about it and to play it and bring more attention to it. You're exactly right. For the next 14-year-old that's out there who's watching going, oh my God, I can play rugby league? Mm-hmm. Because disability sport's not about the disability, it's about the sport. I'm not doing it because I want to prove that disabled people can be whatever. I'm doing it because I want to play rugby league. And yeah, it's like having a ramp into a building. Do you know what I mean? It's such a simple thing to go, yeah, let's put a ramp there so that the guy with a wheelchair can get in. It's like, well, let's have disability rugby league so that the guy with one leg can play. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Well, I'm going to go for a third time and see how it goes. Adam Hills, thanks for joining me on 1+1.
My pleasure.